Greetings, pilgrims, and welcome to episode 115 of the Innsmouth Book Club podcast. As you can see, we brought you directly to the library, and we're going to be heading into the reading room for today's delve into a modern classic, I think it's safe to say. I'm one of your hosts, Tim Mendes.
And I'm the other one, Rob Whiten. Yes, absolutely. And I think we're being very brave today mentioning the S word in Innsmouth, because if you mention the S word too many times, you might feel a little tap on your shoulder, I think.
Yeah, or hear a rumble in the sewer systems, you never know what's lurking in there.
I generally get that anyway around here, but that's. Before we start, just a couple of things to mention. We'd like to remind you that the Innsmouth Forum is now up and running, and I'm pleased to say we've had some new people sign up over this last week. We've got some good topics of conversation going. So just like to say hello and thanks for signing up to Alta, Tobias Nielsen, Steve Grant, Luke of the Clay Narration YouTube channel, which I'll put a link to below. And as well as discussions, do feel free to promote any events you've got going on or any new books you've got coming out. Or if you just want to recommend a book or a film, then that's great as well. Speaking of events, I believe you're fresh back from Whitby, sir.
I am, yes, up at Whitby Goth Weekend, playing Goth at the Brewery, where we headlined my band Groovy and Green, where we actually banged out a rendition of our song "The Shuttered Room," which the title will tweak some listeners' interests. I just want to say a special thank you to everybody who came, but also to James White, one of our Innsmouth Literary Festival patrons, who travelled up from somewhere near Leeds, I believe, to come and see me do my musical thing. So cheers, James, much appreciated.
Nice one. That's excellent. That's really good. Yeah, I think that's what's coming across on the forum as well, because there's a lot of ILF people there. How quickly that has built up into a very nice community.
Absolutely. Oh, speaking of which, at the same time I was doing my thing, Matthew Wood, aka Edwardian Tales, was doing one of his things at Whitby Abbey, which was just over the road from where we were. In fact, you could see the Abbey from stage. And when we went on, it was actually lit up green, which was a nice touch.
Oh, lovely. I think I saw some photos today. It looked outstanding. Yeah. And yeah, Matthew is just starting his Christmas tour, I think, with Edwardian Tales. We'll put a link up to that below. In fact, as we're recording, I think he's doing a YouTube performance tonight of The Spider, which is an excellent story. I'm going to see if I can catch that later on.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and catch him when he comes down to Lewis. Because I missed him last year because I had something else on. I'm gonna try and do it this year.
And there is one other event, of course, that we shall remind you of. That's January the 10th, 26th. That's the Clark Ashton Smith Conference being held over in Auburn at the Carnegie Library in Auburn, no less, organised by our friend Niels Hedgelin. And it's got a stellar lineup of panelists and artists and some very interesting artifacts going on display, I think.
It was worth going just to see Skinner, I think.
Totally. If you haven't seen Skinner, check out his Facebook page. I think I put the link in the last Strange Shadows episode, but I'll put it down below as well because his artwork is something else.
Oh, it's brilliant, isn't it? The man's a hero.
Right, speaking of something else, shall we delve into Shoggoths in Bloom? I don't feel comfortable saying that. Because this guy does delve into Shoggoths, doesn't he?
He does. He does. Yeah, it's a very interesting take on it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's hard to try and describe that it's like one part David Attenborough, and then because there's a bit of that in there, but then there's all the sort of undercurrents of the Second World War looming, and so it's a very interesting story.
Yes, and it's written by Elizabeth Bear, of course. Elizabeth Bear was born in Connecticut in 1971. On her bio, it says she was born the same day as Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, but in a different year. That's nice.
Yeah, I saw that in the bio. It made me chuckle actually.
She had a range of various office jobs and was a technical writer. Began writing seriously in 2001, and her first novel was published in 2005, Hammered, which is a sort of military thriller sci-fi series. She's a very prolific author, actually. She's won 2 Hugos for short fiction, Sturgeon Award, and Hammered won her the Locus Award for the best new novel. She's not a writer I'm familiar with other than this story. I can see she's produced a lot of fantasy and sci-fi, but she's done some other Lovecraftian work as well, I understand.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because you don't often see people who do like the proper high fantasy or hard sci-fi stuff sort of drifting into the Lovecraftian end of things. But Elizabeth Bear's done quite a lot. In fact, she released a collection in 2012 entitled Shoggoths in Bloom, which has a lot of her short stories, and it has a couple of the more Lovecraftian ones in it. But yeah, this is by no means her only mythos story. Bear has written Tiger Tiger, which is a Cthulhu mythos Sherlock Holmes story, which appeared in Shadows over Baker Street. Lovecraftian stories Follow Me Light, Inelastic Collisions, and her most recent mythos is the Tor published novella On Safari in R'lyeh and Carcosa with Gun and Camera.
Oh, what a great title.
Yeah, which is described as cozy Lovecraftian. And I've got it on my Kindle, but I haven't actually read it yet.
Right, right.
Yeah, Elizabeth Bear also teamed up with another fantasy and sci-fi writer by the name of Sarah Manette, who's also done quite a bit of Lovecraftian on her own, but they created something called the Boojum verse. Yeah, the Boojum verse is a series of stories combining elements of the Cthulhu mythos with the bestiary of Lewis Carroll in a space opera setting.
Nice.
Yeah, they're really good. So you got like Bandersnatch and Raths and Cheshires and Doppelkinder and all kind of really, really good stories. So yeah, they're well worth tracking down. In fact, yeah, there's one of them in the very book that I'm going from at the minute, but we'll get on to that in a bit.
Well, speaking of that, then, shall we look at the publication history for this story? I think it's been published in quite a few different collections.
Indeed, yeah. It was originally published in the March 2008 issue of Asimov's Science Fiction. Now, Asimov's Science Fiction is an American monthly currently published by Dell Magazines that was originally launched as a quarterly by Davis Publications in 1977 after they got permission from Isaac Asimov to use his name. Now, Asimov has never been part of the editorial team or anything, but he did write editorials in the early days.
Oh, right. Oh, nice. That's good.
So that was it. That was its first publication, was in that. And from that, Shoggoths in Bloom won a Hugo Award, one of the two Hugos you mentioned.
Yeah.
It won Best Novelette in 2009 and has, gone on to be reprinted several times in several mythos-themed anthologies. It's quite a prolific story. For example, we're both going from different anthologies right now, aren't we?
Yes, yes, totally. I've got an anthology that I'd never actually seen before. And it always amazes me, even when you're deep into Lovecraft as we are, so to speak, you still find these anthologies that you've never heard of.
Mm.
This is the Book of Cthulhu, edited by Ross E. Lockhart. And this was put out by Nightshade Books in 2011.
Oh, nice.
So it's been out for a fair while. And Nightshade Books, of course, we know and love, because that's the series we're following for Strange Shadows, our Clark Ashton Smith podcast, the complete collection of Smith's works. And again, as with the Smith books, very nicely produced, very nicely laid out. And the list of authors in here is top class, really. Apart from Elizabeth Bear, we've got Caitlin Kiernan, Ramsey Campbell, Charles Stross, W.H. Pugmire. And in fact, the story directly before Elizabeth Bear's Shoggoths in Bloom is Michael Shea, Fat Face, another one of our favourite Shoggoth stories.
Oh, brilliant.
Thomas Ligotti is in here, Joe R. Lansdale, Brian Lumley, Gene Wolfe. So yeah, a really excellent collection. And I got it primarily for this story, but I'm glad I got it now because there's a few other things in here that I've not read before.
No, it sounds like a good one. I'm not sure whether I've got that one or not. I might have. I'm not entirely sure. But I'm going from New Cthulhu, The Recent Weird, which was released in 2011 from Prime Books. And yeah, this is one of those that I actually found in a charity shop for a couple of quid and picked it up. And it's got some absolute cracking stuff in it. In fact, it's a lot of similar authors, actually. So yeah, we've got Caitlin Kiernan, John Langan, Mark Laidlaw, Laird Barron, W.H. Pugmire, Elizabeth Bear, obviously Sarah Manette, a solo story from her. China Melville, Kim Newman, Michael Shea, and Charles Stross. Yeah, it's got a Cold War in it by Charles Stross.
I like that. That's a great story.
Yeah, so but it's also got Mongoose by Elizabeth Bear and Sarah Manette, which is one of the Bujinverse stories.
All right.
Yeah, so it's a cracking collection. It's a big old tome.
And you can pick these up online for quite reasonable price sometimes. At other times you see them and they're like 75 quid or something.
Oh God, yeah.
Certain online retailers have very strange pricing policies.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I believe there was a second volume of New Cthulhu, which I haven't got, which I should look into because this is actually a real top-notch collection, this.
I think there was a follow-up to the Book of Cthulhu as well. I think there was a volume 2 of that. So yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so we are firmly in Lovecraft country for this story, and it opens with, "Well now, Professor Harding," the fisherman says, as his bluebird skips across Penobscot Bay. "I don't know about that. The jellies don't trouble with us, and we don't trouble with them. He's not much older than 40, but wizened, his hands work roughened, and his face reminiscent of saddle leather in texture and in hue. Professor Harding's age, and Harding watches him with concealed interest as he works the Bluebird's engine. He might be a veteran of the Great War, as Harding is." So straight away, we've very much got time and place, and we've got this possible connection between these men, although as we find out here, they don't necessarily want to strengthen that connection or particularly acknowledge it for reasons that become apparent quite quickly, perhaps.
Yeah, it's very interesting because it builds off a lot of historical tensions in many different ways, doesn't it? And then obviously you've got the Shoggoth aspect to it, but you've got the looming of the Reich, basically.
Yeah. So we're in the period sort of just before World War II, and obviously, well, as it's described later, the storm is rising in Europe, and there's several references to events there. But I also like to place it. We get another reference here of a actual event, and then shoot down all of Harding's attempts to open conversation about the near riots provoked by a fantastical radio drama about an alien invasion of New York City less than a fortnight before. And this, of course, refers to the Halloween 1938 broadcast of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds,
Mm.
which I'm sure, as everyone knows, was supposedly taken as a real live broadcast. Well, it was a live broadcast, but was taken as news rather than fiction. I'm not sure if that's been overplayed a little bit when you read into it, but I think certainly some people were fooled by it.
Yeah. Well, you've only got to look at what happened in 1992 over here with Ghost Watch, because I remember that. I remember people thought Michael Parkinson had been possessed.
Well, not before time, some might
Yeah.
say. But that was the same with that because I came in about 10 minutes into that. I missed the start. And I think that's what happened with War of the Worlds as well. People who tuned in and missed the start, though I don't know that it was made obvious at the start. It was certainly made obvious at the end because apparently Wells closed the show by saying, "What we've just done is the equivalent of dressing up in a sheet, jumping out of a bush, and saying boo."
Nice.
So that kind of gives the game away, doesn't it, really?
I like to think Mr. Lovecraft would appreciate that, being as what he liked to do in graveyards, but when he was showing people around Providence.
Oh dear. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, so there's natural tension between the two men, isn't there? Because obviously Professor Harding is a person of color, and the fisherman isn't. So you're saying, yeah, while we would have been in the war together, we would have not been in the same units.
Yes. Oh, segregation was practiced up until I think it was 1948 in the US Army.
Mm.
In fact, I've just returned from a 4-day trip to the Ardennes battlefields in Belgium. There's some fantastic museums there, amazing museums, and of course, a lot of photography and artifacts from the time. And one thing that is pointed out is how segregation was widely practiced, and there were African American units, and they basically weren't allowed to go into combat and all this kind of stuff, which is pretty much what he says here, right?
Pretty much, yeah. Yeah, because they were given like admin roles and
Yeah, driving trucks and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, fetching, carrying kind of thing. Yeah.
And of course, we set this against Lovecraft's well-known views. So
Yep.
it's I think it's a very nice attempt by the author here to bring another aspect to Lovecraftian work.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think it's handled very well as well. It's never strays into that uncomfortable territory, if you know what I mean.
It's nuanced, I think, is the
Yeah,
thing.
that's the
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Now, what this did mean as we go into the background, there was a few names and terms I was not that familiar with here, because this is not an area of history we studied at school.
No.
I think we did a little bit on the American Civil War, I vaguely remember, but there's a whole lot of history and events here that are totally unknown to me. We get mention of the Buffalo Soldiers, which of course I knew from the Bob Marley song, and that was about it.
Same. Yeah.
These were units formed in 1866 in the US Army, and they were those segregated units that we were just talking about, mostly used on the frontier war, I think. I guess in a sense soldiering is perhaps in Harding's family line.
Yes, because it says that the Harding was the grandson of Nathan Harding, the Buffalo Soldier, who was an African-born ex-slave who fought on both sides of the Civil War. When Grandpa Harding was sent to serve in his master's place, he deserted, lied, and stayed on with the Union Army after. So, yeah, he basically fought against the things that were keeping him down, kind of thing.
So we then circle back to these jellies.
Mm.
I always think of Reese Shearsmith, Mr. Jelly, Mr. Jolly.
Oh, nice.
And I mean, we've got an idea of what they are because of the title and because we know this stuff. But I think if you were coming into this cold, you think, what's going on here? Jellies?
Mm.
They clear out a few pots, the fisherman says, meaning lobster pots, but they don't damage the pot. Just flow around it and digest the lobster inside. It's not convenient, but it's not a threat either. Why don't you do something about the Shoggoths? And the fisherman replies, oh, what could we do? We can't hurt them. And Lord knows, I wouldn't want to get one's ire up. That's one of the best understatements I've read in a long time. When confronted by a Shoggoth, don't get its ire up.
Well, this is why, like, I'm such a fan of this story, because Elizabeth Bear's characterizations are great to the point where you know already by halfway down the second page who we're dealing with in this fisherman. He's your proper kind of grizzled old bugger in a sou'wester, right? You just picture him without minimal description.
And I like this idea that the lobsters are dissolved in the pots, but not the pots. That's very selective digestion, isn't it?
Oh yeah.
We get a little bit of background about Harding here. He's a professor and basically has been interested in Shoggoths for about 5 years. It's taken him 5 years to get here. 5 years or more like his entire life since the war. The sea-swept rocks of the remote Maine coast are habitats to a panoply of colourful creatures. It's an opportunity, a little studied maritime ecosystem. This is in part due to the difficulty of access and in part due to the perils inherent in close contact with its rarest and most spectacular denizen, Oracupoda horribilis, the common surf shoggoth. Surf shoggoth, reverb, Dick Dowell.
Oh man,
The surfing shoggoths. There we go. There's our first band name.
that's great. Yeah. See, I love this. This is where it gets real Attenborough vibes to me, because we get more, don't we? Which, after the fashion of common names, is neither common nor prone to linger in the surf. In fact, O horribilis is never seen above the water except in late autumn. Such authors as mention them assume the Shoggoths heave themselves on remote coastal rocks to bloom and breed. That's my best Attenborough impression.
Very nice. Very nice. So they're not really visible most of the year round. They certainly don't linger in the surf, but in what is presumed to be their breeding system, he thinks it is, they come up and sounds like they sort of sun themselves on the rocks, or they join together, perhaps to mate.
Yeah, and they sort of sprout these big old like appendages like trees, don't they? And flowers and stuff, which ties into Robert Bloch's sort of characterization of a Shoggoth, your tree-like Shoggoths.
Yes.
So we get that, don't we? Like they're basically big ball of protoplasm most of the time, but then they sort of, when they come to the surface, it's almost like lilies or something like that.
Yeah, and fruiting bodies, they're described as some of them as well.
Yeah. So it's kind of fungal. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought there was a bit of Smithian language in this as well, because here I picked up on the word integument.
Nice.
In this state, they are torpid, unresponsive. As long as their integument is not ruptured, releasing the gelatinous digestive acid within, they may be approached in safety. So yeah, integument is like the kernel of a seed, the outside, the casing of a seed.
Yeah.
And I have to say, we'll get into how he interacts with these things, but he's either brave. No, let's call him brave.
Let's call him brave. Yes.
Let's
Yeah.
call
And
him
we get
brave.
another really class paragraph here describing the Shoggoths, which I'm going to read. A mature specimen of O. horribilis at some 15 to 20 feet in diameter and an estimated weight in excess of 8 tons is the largest of modern Shoggoths. However, the admittedly fragmentary fossil record suggests the prehistoric Shoggoth was a much larger beast, although only 2 fossilized casts of prehistoric Shoggoth tracks have been recovered. The oldest exemplar dates from the Precambrian period. The size of that single prehistoric specimen of a species provisionally named Arachopodia antediluvius suggests it was made by an animal more than triple the size of the modern O. horribilis.
That's a very prehistoric thing, and was it the megalodon, which was a shark 5 times the size of the great white, and the mammoths and all that? That notion that everything back then was bigger and more deadly.
Yeah, it's that super fauna thing, isn't it? It's well, Godzilla, you know.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
That's all that the Meg,
yeah.
all those kaiju. That's all they're kind of to do with.
And I love the fact that we have not a fossilized Shoggoth, because how would that fossilize? Well, we again we'll find out something about that later on. But we've got fossilized tracks. That's a nice touch.
Yeah,
And we get some other types of Shoggoth mentioned here as well, which I think is great. We've got the black Adriatic Shoggoth, which is even rarer and more limited in its range. And I don't know if it's intentional that we had Fat Face before this story in this collection, but there's another type of Shoggoth. And it's the great thing with Lovecraft, isn't it? You can take one of his creations and you can have, well, pretty much whatever you want. You can make whatever you want of it.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I like the fact that they also give the common Surf Shoggoth another name as well, which is very in keeping with species of creature, isn't it? It's also known as the jeweled Shoggoth.
Shiny.
Shiny, shiny Shoggoths. There's another band name, the Shiny Shoggoths.
And in fact, we get a very nice description. I thought a lot of the descriptions in this I've mentioned Smith already, were quite Smithian rather than Lovecraftian. There's some really nice descriptive passages here. Now that the sun is higher and at their backs, Harding can see the animal's colours. Its body is a deep sea green, reminiscent of hunks of broken glass as sold at aquarium stores. The tendrils and knobs and fruiting bodies covering its dorsal surface are indigo and violet. In the sunlight they dazzle, but in the depths of the ocean the colours are perfect camouflage, tentacles waving like patches of algae and weed. Yeah, it's a very evocative description, and you can think of, I suppose, the Portuguese man of war and jellyfish and squids changing colour and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's another little great bit here as well, where it says the Shoggoth or Shoggoths. It's impossible to tell from the distance if it's one large individual or several merged mid-sized ones. On the rocks ahead, glisten like jelly confections. Some really nice similes and things like this. It's yeah, very, very evocative. But then you get that dread come in right under the passage you read. Unless you caught it moving, you'd never see the translucent, dappled monster before it engulfed you.
Yes, unless you're lot digested.
Yeah.
And I like this mix because obviously Harding is a scientist. So we get this range of descriptions from almost the poetic to the scientific. We learn that they're bereft of nerve nets, ganglia, axons, neurons, dendrites, and glial cells. This apparent contradiction, animals with even simplified nervous systems are either large and immobile, or if they are mobile, quite small, like a starfish, is not the only interesting thing about a Shoggoth. And perhaps we get to the main point. He wants to study these creatures because they are apparently functionally immortal. They do not die of old age. Or at least no one's seen the dead one, we find out, but no one's seen the young one either.
Yeah, and I like that. It sort of compares it to Maine lobsters, and the same thing where they they return to the fisheries to breed and things like that, but they don't die of old age either. Yeah, it's like in deep sea wrecks, you find these lobsters that they hundreds of years old and they're just enormous.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, I've seen some pictures of this is before AI, so these giant bloody lobsters. It's like they just keep growing and growing and growing.
I have to say, this is one thing I'm with HPL on. There's obviously a lot of things that I'm not, but don't go in the sea. Why
Mm,
would you want to go in the sea? The deeper you go, the worse it gets.
yeah. Well, it's like in this, because obviously with the comparison to jellyfish, they mentioned things like the Portuguese man of war and things like that. Because, yeah, I mean, they're just as weird as shoggoths
Oh, yeah.
because they're not a single entity. They're like a conglomeration of entities. It's just such a bizarre creature. And there's certain types of jellyfish that I believe can, if you basically killed them, they could resurrect themselves. They come
Wow.
back to life if you chop them up in bits, and then the little bits all can become little jellyfishes.
Necromantic
Mm,
jellyfish.
yeah.
That's another band name for you.
Oh, class.
So this is where Harding shows his mettle because this is his one chance. They're up on the rocks. They're above the surface. He gets the boat taken in close and he kind of jumps from the boat to the rock that has got Shoggoths on it. And he's armed with his trusty belt knife and his boots, his sample kit. That's what you want to go up against a Shoggoth with, isn't it? Boots and a belt knife.
I love that. I love this little line here. Aiming his wellies at the forsaken spit of land. Talk about a wing and a prayer. Just a pair of wellies. Wallop.
But again, the implication here is that if he gets a good sample here and discovers something about these creatures, that way lies tenure and security and a research budget. Just one long slippery leap away.
Yeah, see, Harding suspects that shoggoths may have pharmacological uses, and basically speculating about what might be isolated from their gelatinous flesh. So, which is what would be the first thing that would happen, right? If people discovered a shoggoth.
Oh, totally. Well, what happens in the rainforests and all over the place, from time immemorial with, tiger bones and all that kind of stuff, it's horrible, most of it.
But in the modern sort of thing, Big Pharma would be in there in like shit, like a shot, wouldn't
Yes,
they?
yes. Well, that was the basis for one of my Innsmouth Echo stories. But they were working with the deep ones who have serial longevity if they're not actually immortal. So that was, yeah, Big Pharma getting hold of one. And, well,
I remember that. I remember that one. Yeah.
so he manages to land on the rock. The fisherman is a bit like, you want to hurry up there, mate. The sky's turning, with his experienced eye, he can see the clouds coming in. The fisherman throws over his buckets and ropes. And I love that he just gets a hammer out, climbs up the side of this rather slippery rock, one should imagine, and just starts poking this Shoggoth around with his hammer.
Yeah. There's three of them, isn't there? It's like one of them would be bad enough, but three walloping great shoggoths.
So he must be very confident that they're not going to respond to him.
Yeah, because they're basically completely inert at this during this part of the cycle, aren't they?
And this is where he gets his first sample. As he's crouched on the rocks working fast, he notices those glitters again among the seaweed. He picks one up. A moment after touching it, he realized that might not have been the best idea, but it doesn't burn his fingers. It's transparent like glass and smooth like glass and cool like glass and knobby, about the size of a hazelnut, a striking green with opaque milk-white dabs at the tip of each bump. So he's not quite sure what these are, but he tucks one in his sample vial. Spores, egg cases, shedding. but at least he's got a sample of something to take back.
And time's ticking on, so the fisherman's getting a bit antsy now, isn't he? I think you'd better hurry.
Yeah, the sea's picking up, the clouds are coming in, and now the boat can't get quite so close to the rock. So he's got to make another big jump.
Mm.
He chucks his bits and pieces across first. He kicks off his wellies, his aviator's jacket, sends those across first, and then follows. This time he doesn't make it. He goes in. The water closes over him, cold as a line of fire. It knocks the air from his lungs on impact, though he gritted his teeth in anticipation. Harding strokes furiously for the surface, the waves more savage than he had anticipated. He needs the momentum of his dive to keep from being swept back against the rocks. I really like this for a couple of reasons. One, cold as a line of fire. That's a great line.
Mm-hmm.
But as a total landlubber, it is that the sea looks quite smooth. You know, there's a little bit of wind picking up until you get in it. And even a 3 foot wave is just chucking you about like a cork. You've got absolutely no power at all against the sea.
No, I like the mention of it knocking the air from his lungs as well, because anybody who's been in specifically the North Sea, as I have, being a child of the North, we used to go on holiday and
Yeah,
be like, let's go for a swim in the sea, right? Even in the summer, right? The North Sea, you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
but and it does. You jump in, especially as soon as it touches your nether regions. It's that.
That sounds that everyone knows.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And it was always get your shoulders under, then you'll warm up.
that's it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going out that far. I just felt something move under my foot. I'm going back on the shore. Anyway, he manages to get back to the boat with the assistance of the fisherman, who chucks a blanket over him. Uh, so this guy is sort of looking after him, I think, you know.
Yeah, he's got a thermos as well. Coffee in a thermos. So
And we get the rain coming now. So he's going to lose some time due to the weather because obviously the fishermen ain't going to go out in any sort of storm, especially where there's rocks and shoggoths involved. So instead, in good Call of Cthulhu investigator terms, he decides to spend some time researching and visiting libraries and the like. We get a little bit about his background here as well, right? About he was brought up in Harlem, then moved down to the south to Alabama to go to college. Didn't like the experience, as one can imagine. Ends up at Yale. And we get mention of Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois. Booker T. Washington, the name was familiar. I had a rough idea who he was. The other I was totally unfamiliar with. But basically, they were both leading figures in the African American community. Washington was pushing for African American businesses. Du Bois was a writer, historian, civil rights activist. So very prominent figures in their day.
yeah, it's interesting because with the mentions of these guys and stuff like that, had very overlaps with Lovecraft Country, the book,
Oh,
the Matt
yes.
Ruff book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very similar because one imagines as well when down in Alabama, because that would be where they would have like sundown towns and all that Jim Crow stuff, right? And so yeah, I can imagine he wanted to get out of there as quickly as possible.
But Bear then ties this in beautifully with current events
Mm.
because he goes down to the local tavern where everyone's talking about what's happening in Germany. And in fact, there's a headline in the Boston Herald: Germany sanctions lynch law.
Yeah, so you can imagine. I mean, well, I can't imagine what that would feel like to read something like that coming from that kind of background.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm imagining this is a reference to Kristallnacht, which was November 38, when basically the SA were let loose on the streets to smash up Jewish businesses and terrorize people, a pogrom.
Yeah, it's definitely that because it says here he reads rumors of deportation, he reads of murders and beatings and broken glass. So yeah, Kristallnacht.
He feels the stifling shadow of history, the press of incipient war. Oh God, he repeats. He lays the paper down. Are you ready to order? Somehow the waitress has appeared at his elbow without his even noticing. I like that how you pulled back into not to say the mundane world, it's not the right
Yeah.
expression, but
So yeah, he gets a triple scotch, and who blamed him?
yeah. And the fisherman joins him now. We discover that his name is Bert, and there's a nice little exchange here, I think.
Mm,
And Bert is obviously no fan of what's going on in Germany. He makes that very clear. So they're talking about comparing the treatment of the Jews in Germany to Jim Crowism in the US. I don't hold with that, Bert says. I mean, no offense, I wouldn't want you marrying my sister. It's all right, Harding answers. I wouldn't want you marrying mine either. So there's a nice little understanding there between them, I think.
yeah, there's definitely a kind of they feel a kinship, don't they? Because obviously they were both in the war and all the rest of it. And despite their obvious differences, you get the impression that they're not that different in terms of personalities, which is nice.
And Bert actually says that his grandfather's house was on the Underground Railroad, right? That's
Yeah,
where they're getting people out from the south.
exactly.
So it is on that side of things.
Yeah.
But after a scotch or two, a triple scotch, Harding decides to visit the library. And I thought this was nice because we get not the Necronomicon, not the Berlethian shopping list, but we do get some books that are these real or not, but they're presented as real books, very much in that Lovecraftian vein.
Mm,
In particular, we get a Harvard professor's 1839 monograph on marine animals of the Northeast. According to the index, it references Shoggoths under the old name of submersible jellies on pages 46, 78, and 133 to 137. In addition, there is a plate bound in between pages 120 and 121. However, when he turns to these, they've all been cut out of the book, razored out, as it says.
except the plate, weirdly. Yeah.
Yes. And there's the biggest crime here of all. Whoever liberated the pages also cracked the binding. That's a
Ooh,
hanging offence, isn't it?
isn't it? Isn't it? Yeah.
So he's intrigued by this. He phones his old professor, John Marshland. Nice, appropriate name. And then the name becomes even more appropriate because we find that this book he was looking at, Deep Sea and Intertidal Species of the North Atlantic, was authored by one Gilman.
Yep. I loved that. I thought that was a really nice tie-in. You know, Professor Gilman. Great. Yeah.
Yeah, and we get a description of that plate, and we get mention of a John James Audubon. It's a hand-tinted John James Audubon engraving picturing a quiescent Shoggoth docile on a rock. So Audubon was a real person. He was an artist, and he specialised in North American bird life, basically. So he's one of those illustrators. That's a kind of lost art, isn't it?
Isn't it? Yeah. I'd love to, yeah, them guys who like drew all the like caterpillars and moths and butterflies and stuff in them fabulous Victorian encyclopedias and stuff that you used to get. Because those drawings were great.
Yeah, and that's exactly the time this guy was around. And I think there was an Audubon Society or something set up, something using his name.
Mm,
I always think of who was the guy over here with the ducks? Was it Peter Scott, wasn't it? I think
yes. Yeah.
that kind of character puts me in mind of.
Mm. It gives a little bit of background of Audubon here. He's the Creole child of a Frenchman who scarcely escaped being drafted to serve in the Napoleonic Wars, apparently. So, yeah, I didn't actually realize when I was reading it that he was a real person until I did a bit of digging.
That's that nice mix, right, of fictional things. Yeah.
Isn't it? It was only today that I realized it was a real person. I thought it was a creation of Elizabeth Bears. Yeah.
And there's another name that struck me down here as well. The cold front that came in behind the rain brought fog with it. The entire harbour is blanketed by morning. Harding shows up at 6 a.m. anyway, hopeful, a thermos in his hand, and his sampling kit in a pack slung over his shoulder. Bert shakes his head by a piling. He's socked in all day, he says regretfully. He won't take the bluebird out in this. So Bert then asks him, want to come and have breakfast with me and Mrs. Clay? Innsmouth Clay.
Mm,
First thing that sprang into my mind there.
nice. Nice.
And they're talking about events in Europe again. And have this conversation about would you enlist? Would you go and fight over there? Which plays very much into the ending of the story, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But we go back to that segregation again. Harding shakes his head. Even if Roosevelt was ever going to bring us into it, they'd never let me fight. That was the Great War too. Coloured soldiers mostly work supply, thank you. At least Nathan Harding got to shoot back. And then they start speaking French to each other. So this, I think, brings them a little closer together. They're obviously both stationed in France. And in fact, Harding even thinks he's got a good idea where this guy might have been stationed. I thought it was a nice little touch.
Yeah, and there's and that ties into the last bit of this paragraph where he says, if you want to fight so bad, you could always join the Foreign Legion,
Mm.
the French Foreign Legion,
Yes.
which which my brain always thinks of carry on, follow that camel.
Ah, right, right. I think of that, and I think of Laurel and Hardy.
Oh, of Laurel and Hardy, yeah, of
Yeah.
course. Yeah.
What did you join up for? To forget. What did you come to forget? I don't remember. You've forgotten what you came here to forget? So Harding gets back to the hotel full of apple pie and cheddar cheese and maple smoked bacon. And there's an envelope waiting for him from Marshland.
Yeah, it's the missing pages, isn't it? What I like here is that where they've come from, because Yale's copy had gone missing, so they contacted another university, the Miskatonic, who had one in their special collection.
Their special collection under the counter.
We all know about that. Yeah.
So this spurs him to go back out onto the Bluebird. The weather clears up. This expedition is more of a success as he begins sampling in earnest and finds himself pelted by more of the knobby transparent pellets. Whatever they are, they fall from each fruiting body he harvests in showers. Even the insult of an amputation, delivered at a 4-foot reach with long-handled pruning shears, does not draw so much as a quiver from the Shoggoth. My God, he's using pruning shears on the Shoggoth.
I love
It's just great. Isn't it?
Yeah. No. But that really gives it authenticity because you've got to remember that the scientific sort of research of that era was kind of blunt instrument, wasn't it? It was like, let's twat it with a hammer and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. Stick it in formaldehyde and take it back to Blighty.
Exactly.
Kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. Yeah, so when these nodules go, there's a lovely bit here. What he notices is that the nodules fall onto the originating Shoggoth. They bounce from its integument, but on those occasions where they fall onto one of its neighbors, they stick to the tough, transparent hide and slowly settle within to hang in the animal's body like unlikely fruit in a gelatin salad.
That's nice, isn't it?
So yeah, I mean, at this point, we don't know. Are they seeds? Are they, but there's some kind of swapping of genetic material going on.
Yes, yes. Is speculating like crazy here, isn't he? About this process, what this process might be.
Yeah. Is it means of reproduction, genetics, just sharing genetic material? Who knows?
And he's got some more information waiting for him back at the inn because now he's got another fat envelope, and this one contains the information from Dr. Gilman's monograph, reproduced onto 7 yellow legal sheets in a meticulous hand. Marshland obviously recruited one of his graduate students to serve as a copyist because we all know that professors have terrible handwriting.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, and by the postmark, the letter was mailed from Arkham. So there we go. Yeah, it's all tied in nicely, isn't it?
So he's having to think about this, and he puts his hand absently into his jacket pocket, and the vial with the first glass nodule rests there like a talisman, and he's startled to find it cool enough to the touch that it feels slick, almost frozen. He starts and pulls it out. Except where his fingers and the cloth fibres have wiped it clean, the tube is moist and frosted. What the hell? So he takes this thing out, and it's like an ice cube. It's chill.
No, I like this. This is definitely the amateur scientist taking over his trained mind, isn't it? Because he sets it on the edge of his table and pokes it with a fingertip.
Yep, like you do, right?
Like you do. Yeah.
It's already prodded a Shoggoth with a hammer. Now he's poking this thing with his finger.
Yeah, yeah.
And he decides that what the information in the monograph is mostly nonsense. We get a couple of other references here. We get Darwin's On the Origin of the Species, and we get mention of the French botanist Jean-Baptiste Lamarck, who was quite an early exponent of the theory of evolution. But this passage does mention the nodules, which nothing else he's seen mentions, and includes some interesting old legends about the submersible jellies, including a creation tale that would have the Shoggoths as their creator's first experiment in life, something from the elder days of the world. Well, it's the elder things.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which becomes very apparent quite soon.
Oh yeah, we get some lovely tie-ins to mountains, don't we?
So this sets him to thinking, and the conclusion he comes up with is it's not the Shoggoth species that evolves, it's the individual Shoggoths, each animal in itself. Which now, my understanding of the theory of evolution is that over time, generations develop particular characteristics or traits, but this is not happening over generations. This is happening with each single creature.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That's why there's the distinct species of Shoggoths and distinct populations within those distinct species. And yeah, it's a very interesting take on it, isn't it? Singular evolution.
Mm.
It's nice.
And again, that brings us back to that idea of that's why you've got some Shoggoths that can appear like fat face, and some look like this, and other ones that look like that, because they might originate from a single species or a created species, but each has this inbuilt ability to evolve itself. So which way do they go? I suppose it depends on their environment and their circumstances.
This bit is why I instantly thought about it when we were doing a notebook finding a deserted house. Because, you know, the dark young, is it a Shoggoth? Is it not? Debate kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, if Shoggoths happen to come in contact with Shubby, then why would they not evolve in Shubby's image?
Yes, yes. Well, especially when we tie in, as we find out later, their desire to serve.
Indeed.
And if they want to serve a master, they need to be in a form that is most appropriate for that master, I imagine.
There you go. Yeah. Ties it all in nicely, doesn't it? I thought it was very cleverly done.
Finally, he gets his gun out, right? He gets his Colt 1911 automatic pistol out and puts it underneath his pillow. It's starting to get to him. Then we get this sequence that is dreamlike. Well, it is a dream, or is it?
Yeah. Just before we get that, though, we get a nursery rhyme.
Oh, yes, the nursery
which
rhyme.
I love this. Yeah, because he's reading through these handwritten pages, and in some of them there are like bits of legendary. And the one that Harding finds most amusing is a nursery rhyme, a child's counting poem littered with nonsense syllables. He recites it under his breath, thinking of the itsy bitsy spider all the while. The wiggle giggle squiggle is left behind on shore. The whittle giddle squiddle is caught outside the door. EA, EA for Targan, EA. EA, EA, the master comes no more.
Oh, splendid, sir. Masterfully done. Oh, it'll catch on. They'll be singing that in all the playgrounds tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah. The wiggle giggle squiggle.
It's like a child's description of a Shoggoth, isn't it? That's perfect.
It's great, isn't it? Yeah.
So we get this quite extended sort of dream sequence here. Well, he's still in his pajamas and he's out with the Shoggoths. And the Shoggoth, or one of the Shoggoths, is speaking to him. Well, he can hear a voice in his head. And the voice says, "Command." And this is a real nice description, I think, because it is dreamlike, but at the same time, there's that air of reality to it. But it contains the dream logic, because how can he be here? He's reaching for his gun. He's not sure what's going on. Basically, is totally disorientated by this experience.
Yeah, yeah. Because we get a lovely bit here where he's being pursued by a big transparent bubble, shining, iridescent, with sort of rainbow ripples on it. And then he's kind of engulfed. The blow falls soft, as if someone had thrown a quilt around him. He thrashes, though he knows it's hopeless, an atavistic response and involuntary. His flesh should burn, dissolve. He should already be digesting in the monster's acid body. Instead, he feels coolness, buoyancy. No chance of light beyond reflexively closed lids, no sense of pressure, though he imagines he has been taken deep. He's as untouched within it as Bert's lobster pots.
That's a nice reference back.
Isn't it? Yeah.
And because he has this, let's call it a line of communication opened with them, now we get the backstory, the Shoggoth backstory. And yeah, here we have the bulging, radially symmetrical shapes of some prehistoric animal like a squat tentacular barrel grafted to a pair of giant starfish. And the Shoggoth voice is saying, makers, makers. So yeah, that plugs us in directly to the mountains of madness, doesn't it?
Yeah, because it says another bit. It says it's created to serve, purposeless without you, and referring to these barrel-shaped creatures as masters.
Yeah, they retreat to the fathomless sea while warm-blooded mammals overran the earth. There they were free to converse, to explore, to philosophize and build a culture. They only return to the surface vulnerable to bloom. It's not mating, it's mutation. As they rest, sunning themselves upon the rocks, they create themselves anew, self-evolving when they sit tranquil each year in the sun, exchanging information and control codes with their brothers.
There's that lovely bit of almost science fiction into this, well, essentially, you know, botanical, whatever you'd call it, research. Yeah, control codes. So each of these little seeds is information. It's a code. It's a blueprint almost.
Well, this is spot on Lovecraft again, right? Because
Oh yeah, yeah,
this is science. It's not supernatural. They're not summoned from the nether pits.
exactly.
They're created in a test tube or whatever, however it's done. It's some sort of vat.
Absolutely. It's great. It's great the way it's done. Yeah.
Now, we've had that idea of slavery come up. The Shoggoths were created as slaves. And again, we get that nice reference back here. Harding's fingertips tingle. He remembers beaded ridges of hard black keloid across his grandfather's back, the shackle galls on his wrists. Harding locks his hand over the vial of light as if that could stop the itching. It makes it worse. So there's a sympathy between them, perhaps. There's a connection there.
It's interesting because there's comparisons with the connection, but it's a different connection. But he had a connection with the fisherman, and now he's got the connection with the Shoggoth, and it's all to do with upbringing and past and history. Yeah.
History and family backgrounds, yeah. Which again is very Lovecraftian, right? Can't escape your ancestry.
Oh yeah, nice, nice. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, nice.
And now the Shoggoth is saying, your command. And he's trying to say to the Shoggoth, no, you can go. I don't want to command you. Just go, go. It slides back into the ocean as if it never was. Harding blinks, rubbed his eyes to clear slime from the lashes. His results are astounding. His tenure assured. There has to be a way to use what he's learned without returning the Shoggoths to bondage. So the dream is now real because he is back in the real world and is running back to the inn. And this is a nice little touch. He doesn't want to bang on the door because it's late. But when he stumbles to the back, he finds that someone, probably himself, in whatever entranced state in which he left the place, fouled the latch with a slip of notebook paper. The door opens to a tug and he climbs the back stair, doubled over like a child or an animal, hands on the steps, toes so numb he has to watch where he puts them. So he had no knowledge of doing that, but he's left the door unlocked for himself. So he warms himself up with a bath, and now he starts thinking. He looks at the nugget again. It's no longer cold, and his thoughts turn to, with all this shit that's going on in Europe and Germany, what could you do with some Shoggoths?
Yes, he thinks of refugee flotillas, trench warfare, roiling soupy pools of mustard gas, all these horrific memories of the Great War coming back. And yeah, obviously he's it's that thing, isn't it? He could stop it all before it happens. But does he have the right?
Well, this is it. He thinks of the perfect weapon. When he rolls the nodule across his wet palm, ice rhymes to the surface. Command, obedient, sounding pleased to serve, not even free in its own mind. At the last moment, he hesitates. Who is he to condemn a world to war, to the chance of falling under the sway of empire? Who is he to salve his conscience on the backs of suffering shopkeepers and pharmacists and children and mothers and school teachers? Who is he to impose his own ideology over the ideology of the Shoggoth? Because I'm guessing what he's thinking here is, yes, you command the Shoggoths to do X, Y, and Z, but they're going to be quite indiscriminate. They're going to roll across the countryside or they're going to do whatever they're going to do. And that's it. So, is there a parallel here with nuclear weapons in a sense?
I was just going to say it's almost a metaphor for the Manhattan Project, isn't it? It's almost a metaphor for what happened.
Which 38 was in its early stages, right? Jack Parsons and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And then that decision, yes, we've got this weapon that will do this, but should we use it or not? But I think because of the sort of person he is, he turns his back on that, right? And he speaks to the Shoggoth in his mind. I want you to learn to be free, he tells the Shoggoth, and I want you to teach your brothers. The nodule crushes with a sound like powdering glass. Iar, Fatagun Iar, Harding whispers. Iar, the master comes no more.
Nice. And then it ends with a telegram, doesn't it? Sent by Harding to Dr. Lester Green, Wilberforce, Ohio. Effective immediately. Please accept resignation. Stop. En route instantly to France to enlist. Stop. Profoundest apologies. Stop. Please forward belongings to my mother in New York. End.
So he's going to join the Foreign Legion.
Mm.
He's going to take up arms. He's not going to rely on this terrible super weapon. I think for both of those reasons, one, what potentially will be unleashed, but also he doesn't want those beings in slavery anymore.
Yeah, it's a very, very well written story, I think. I got parallels. Do you remember the Tom Baker classic Doctor Who, Genesis of the Daleks?
Yes.
Because the whole point, he's been sent by the Time Lords to the creation of the Daleks. And towards the end of it, he's set up explosives and he's just got two wires. And he could blow all the Dalek research up, but he'd be killing all of these Khaled mutants. And it's that classic line, do I have the right?
The eternal question, in a sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was speculating about the sort of different endings you could have on this. You could have your more pulpy type ending that involves some sort of fisticuffs, some sort of fight with maybe the Navy comes in, all that kind of stuff. Which in a sense is sort of Lovecraft went down that route, I suppose, with the Shadow over Innsmouth.
I don't think it needs it.
Yeah, I think this is much more thoughtful and intelligent, empathetic.
I think that's the thing, because when you first read it, the ending does come across as quite abrupt, but you'll find that even like hours, even days later, you're still thinking about it and the implications of it. So that abruptness, I think, serves the story rather than diminishes it. Because if Elizabeth Bear had tried to go down that route, I think you might have gone into eye roll territory, or it may have felt bolted on, because it's a very personal story, despite all the stuff about the Shoggoths and stuff. It's very much about Harding and his past and reconciling with who he is against what he'd been through and what his ancestors had been through and what the Shoggoths had.
Yeah.
So I think it's that classic weird fiction thing, isn't it? Leaving you with enough what ifs and speculation that it sets up home in your brain.
Yes, it builds that connection. He finds that connection.
Mm.
I mean, I think in one sense, this puts me in mind of Robert E. Howe's Tower of the Elephant, where Conan, the barbarian, inverted commas, feels this empathy towards the monster, inverted commas, and actually helps it out, which goes against the grain of pulp, adventure, two-fisted, whatever.
Yeah.
Again, it just reveals a different level of writing, I think, and thought and understanding.
Yeah, it's very different, isn't it? Despite also feeling very familiar, which I think is a testament to how well it's written, because it feels like it's part of the overall mythos, but yet it feels very fresh.
Yeah. Well, you got all your Call of Cthulhu elements in there. You're investigator. You got a little bit of jumping about. You've got scrambling up rocks. You've got potential danger with the creature.
Yeah.
You've got your library research. You've got the yokel knowledge.
Yep. You've got your dream sequence. Yeah.
It'd be interesting to play that out as a scenario and see how people approach that type of
Would
ending.
actually make a really good scenario. That would actually make a really good Call of Cthulhu one shot, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
You're one of Harding's research students or something,
Throws up a lot of interesting questions and dilemmas, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, that's what we think of Shoggoths in Bloom. We'd be very interested to hear your opinions, of course, dear listener. Speaking of which, we have a number of opinions have come in the mailbag over the last few weeks. And we'll start with the last episode That was 114 Mysteries of the Worm. That was a very interesting look at, well, two versions of Mysteries of the Worm, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah, the fictional one and the anthology. Yeah, thoroughly enjoyed that actually. Yeah, it was quite interesting. I kept digging out more things than I expected to find, you know. So yeah, it was a good one.
And we had a message in from Brett Kramer, one of our patrons. And Brett writes, Love Block. Sorry to self promote, but we had a pretty extensive article about De Vermis Mysterious in issue 4 of the Arkham Gazette. Now, I was unfamiliar with the Arkham Gazette, so I asked Brett to send us a link, which he did. The Arkham Gazette is published by Sentinel Hill Press. Basically, it's a magazine devoted to the Call of Cthulhu game. So it has scenarios. It has a lot of information about Lovecraft Country locations. It's got articles about various things. It looks great. This has not been on my radar either. So I'm going to be getting some of these copies for sure. We'll put the link to the Sentinel Hill Press website below, and you can order the Arkham Gazette through Drive-Through RPG site. So I'll add that link in as well. Looking forward to reading those.
Excellent. Yeah, I have heard of it, but I don't think I've ever seen it. I too will have a delve because it does sound like something that's right up my street. So yeah, we move on now to episode 113, which was Notebook Found in a Deserted House, which has been a very popular episode. In fact, it's one of our highest downloads in such a short space of time. I noticed that when I looked on the YouTube one, the amount of views was there was quite a big discrepancy between that and other episodes of the same sort of time. So yeah, thank you. Everybody's listened to it.
And Jacob King wrote to us via Patreon. You may remember we brought up the name Dorothy McElwraith, who is the editor of Weird Tales that the story was published in. And we both said what a great name that was. And Jacob sent us this. Just got round to this. If you are interested, McElwraith is of Scottish Gaelic origin from Mach Gil Riabach. Now, forgive my terrible pronunciation. Jacob does say here, pronounced roughly Mac Il Rivoch, as in loch, meaning the son of the brindled or grizzled lad. Things get interesting when we note that an epithet for the devil in Gaelic is Anribach, the grizzled one. Keep up the good work.
That's awesome. I love that. I like her name even more now. That's brilliant.
Oh, totally. It was good to start, and now it's even better.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jacob.
Yeah, cheers for that. Yeah, we have another one in from A.T. Johnson, who says, another banger, lads. Well, thank you very much. Being the cousin was on one side of the family, but bore a resemblance to the spouse on the other side, I always kind of took it as some form of doppelganger with a bit of bad info. One of my all-time favorites, though, another stunner of his, penned when he was about 16, is Black Lotus, published by Decamp/Pyramid in The Fantastic Swordsman, and gives big 1001 Nights entertainment and Dunsany vibes. Oh, I'm not familiar with that one, actually.
No, I don't think I've read that. I'm going to be looking that one up, though.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for that.
And yeah, I do like the idea of the cousin being some form of doppelganger. I mean, you know, there's a lot of speculation on this, but I do like that theory.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We had a message in on YouTube as well from Sumabus. This is my favorite mythos story. Thank you for covering it. Well, I think it's one of our favorites as well. And what a perfect Halloween treat.
Absolutely. And on sticking with YouTube, we get one from Journeyman Weather Reporter, who says, just found this podcast with the Bizarre of the Bizarre episode. Really enjoying it. I imagine Cousin Osborne is more of a Cousin Whately or some such. Yeah, that's definitely the sort of implication that I got from it. You know, you had the decayed and undecayed branches of the Whateleys. That's kind of where I was going with it as well.
Yeah, that all fits nicely as well. And again, as we just said, you know, that's the great thing with these weird tales is there's just enough information given to allow you to speculate hugely on pretty much everything.
Absolutely. That is the joy, isn't it? That is the joy.
Yeah. And finally on Facebook, Steve Grant got in touch to say, I enjoyed this one very much. Thank you, Steve. Yeah, I think Block is a favourite of both of ours. We'll definitely be returning to more Block in the future. In fact, I'm going to see if I can find that Black Lotus story perhaps we'll have a look at that sometime.
Yeah, I've got a whole short list of block stories that I want that I want to go through because I really like his Egypt cycle. Obviously, we've covered Faceless God, but there's a couple of others I want to look at.
Yes. And I think we did say at some point, maybe look at Psycho as well, because I've never read it. I mean, obviously, you've seen the film and the remake and blah, blah, blah,
Mm,
but never read the original novel.
yeah.
Those then are some thoughts on our last couple of episodes. Do keep those coming in. We do enjoy hearing from you, particularly our patrons. And of course, if you want to join our patrons, then take a look on the Patreon site. And when you sign up, you get access to bonus content for both the Innsmouth Book Club and Strange Shadows. And of course, you get your quarterly PDF of Innsmouth news, as well as free entry to any events we shall be organising. And I'm sure ILF 26 will be on that list, of course. And in fact, because we haven't done it for a while, we'd like to give a shout out and thanks to our current patrons, including Rick Kneebone, CJ Hooper, Copper Fox Wolf, Norman, Jacob King, Coleman, Steve Grant, Fred Keisha, Gareth Tilley, Alan Brignall, Lee Williams, Niels Hedgelin,
Liam Spinarge, Martin Thorenson, Dominic Allen, Jurek DeVetta, Mark Jenkins, David A. Riley, A.T. Johnson, Gary Pennington, Brett Kramer, Steve Meyer, Wingate Stites, Russell Journey, Justin Woodman, and Lee Clark Sumper.
Marvellous. Thank you one and all for your support. It is very much appreciated. By the way, we did have a question come in about charges for the patrons site. Now, what happens is, apparently, we've just found out, is depending on where you live, or even depending on what state you live in, you may get charged VAT on your subscription fee. So if your subscription is, say, $4, you might find that you're being charged $4.80, depending on where you live. This apparently is all Patreons doing. They calculate this VAT, they work it all out, they send it all off to whoever it needs to be sent off to. Quite frankly, this kind of thing is way beyond my feeble brain.
Oh God, yeah, yeah, no, I wouldn't have the first idea how to calculate VAT. Not the first idea.
Yeah, and this does seem to be an ongoing thing. Obviously I've got a mail order site or two, and what with the tariffs and VAT and various regulations, it has become a bit of a nightmare, a quagmire, I think, for the small business person.
Yeah.
So please do have some sympathy for small businesses at the moment. They're really going through it, particularly when it comes to mail order.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, it's an absolute nightmare at the minute.
Okie doke, that's it for today then. We shall leave the gently lapping waves on the shore of Innsmouth and try not to look at those shiny things out on the rocks. We'll studiously ignore those as we make our way back to Mr. Sargent's bus. What are we going to be looking at next time, sir?
Next time, speaking of patrons, we are going to be doing another one of our patron exclusives where we're going to be delving back into fungi from Shoggoth. It's going to be the next one in our ongoing saga of the Sonnet cycle.
I think it's part 9, but I stand to be corrected.
Yeah, I think it is part 9. Because, yeah, or we can do this in 2 or 3 episodes. Yeah, of course you can.
Well, we do like to be thorough, if nothing else.
That's true. That's true.
All right, on that note, thanks again for joining us today, folks. It's goodbye from me, Rob Poyton.
And it's goodbye from me, Tim Mendes.